Just Silverton acknowledges the Indigenous peoples on whose traditional territories we stand. Can I get somebody to move the adoption of the agenda? Councilor May, seconded by Councilor Campbell. All in favor? Great. Down to new business budget discussion. I will turn it over to Catherine and Taylor.
Okay, so I am going to start by sharing my screen, and that will allow folks online to be seeing the same information. So I am looking at the Village of Silverton 2026 budget summary, which I think is probably the top page on your packages. So it's summary of the work that we have, of where we're sitting right now. And I will say that what we've done at this point is we have taken all of the projects that have been identified by council in some of our discussions around annual report and priorities and things like that, and the previous budget discussions that we've had. And we have included them all in the budget, as well as the regular operating costs. And as you can see, capital projects are a really, I mean, if they're listed as capital projects, let's call them special projects rather than all, because some of them are not necessarily capital in nature. But we have this sort of our general operating revenue and our general operating expense. There is about $124,000 deficit there, about $125,000 there. But on the right below that, we see the water revenues and the water expenses, and we're good. So those sort of work to cancel each other out. So down at the bottom, our net operating result before capital, we've got a net deficit of about $44,000 that we're looking at. Now, we'll get to that in a minute because that's the important point for this meeting is what are we going to do about that discrepancy, because as everyone knows, we have to present a balanced budget. But I would like to just look at something first, which is our total operating expense. Let's look at that at about 700,000 in a little bit. And then look at our special projects. They are nearly double the amount of our regular operating activities. So it's like we're doing 2 extra years plus the regular year of activity in one, which is, I think, higher than, I mean, based on my experience, this is more special projects than a local government would normally take on. You don't usually see a tripling of your budget when you add in the special projects. So that's just to sort of set the stage and say this is a pretty ambitious budget that we are presenting. But we're feeling good about it. I feel good about it. We're feeling good about it.
Awesome.
Okay. Okay. So does anybody have any questions about the summary page that they want to address right now?
I just would like to say that I feel good about it.
I really
Meeting's over.
Everybody.
Follow it. I know, from the previous discussions that we've had, I know that we're not in dire straits.
Yeah, it's I think that we were, when we got to the number, which was a little bit later in the day than we had hoped, we were pleasantly surprised. That said, I think that Taylor can speak to this with maybe a little bit of passion, but we are still feeling the effects of 2023 and 2024. And there is a lot that was done or wasn't done, depending on it has made it far more challenging to wrap up 2025 and to then get started on 2026, just because we don't have that solid background that we know where we're starting from. And so we've gone through a number of iterations of all of these numbers, just because the ground under our feet has been shifting a little bit as things have come up through audit. So we're grateful that Linda has been working through some of those things to try to make sense of it. Because even last year, I think there were some misunderstandings about how things were recorded in Silverton historically and where that left us for right now. So I think that is coming together. So positive spin on it, but there has been a lot of work. And so again, apologies that this has taken a while to get it in front of you. Are you ready? Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll start with the revenue side of things. Or would you prefer to start with projects or revenue? I think it makes sense to start with revenue.
I think so too.
Yep.
Go on with the pink on the top.
Take on the top, and it's going to say taxation with a little yellow square right there in the top right corner.
Go for that. That's. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yes.
Yeah, that way. Yeah. So here we are just looking through our 2025 budgeted figures, 2025 actual figures, and our 2026 budget. I don't need to read the numbers out loud, I don't think. I'm gonna give everybody a moment to take a peek at this page and let me know if there is anything that warrants further discussion. The yellow is the big question mark. That's where council has the most opportunity to make decisions and choose direction. And so it's just highlighted because that is something to think about.
Can I ask if the numbers in the 2026 budget are tailored to, no pun intended, to that $232,000 figure, or I mean, is this kind of bare bones and you would like to move a little bit higher than that? Because that's with
Well,
very minimal tax increase. So,
that is a zero tax increase over last year. So that is how things have been budgeted, because we're looking for direction from council about
Okay.
what is going to be an acceptable range for tax increase. And there didn't seem to be a way to give council enough information to make an informed recommendation on that without putting out together the whole budget and figuring out what
okay.
that deficit, what that difference is going to be.
yeah, okay, so this budget is tailored to a zero tax increase as a starting point.
Correct.
Brian, is he just seeing what we've got online? Is it best we probably send him the message with the file just so he can look through it all?
Yeah, yep, they're all in the.
Thanks, Tanya. I can see everything. I'm actually running through my phone. My computer crashed, but I can see everything. Thanks for checking in.
No
I don't
worries.
like the red, but we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
So there haven't really been many changes to this compared to the last time that we spoke. Some of the things that, like, we're still budgeting $70,000 for campground revenue. We're still our numbers for business licenses and other sorts of revenue, whether it's from hall rental fees, those are relatively unchanged. The Silverton Gallery revenue is based on the current agreement with Valhalla Fine Arts Society, and the curling rink revenue is based on the current agreement with the Arena Society. Fire hall rental is the amount that we are proposing to invoice New Denver for as a condition, as part of that service. So
Can I just back up a little bit?
yeah,
Small communities grant. I see there's a large drop on that one. Is there a reasoning for that?
we don't know the number yet.
Oh,
So we've put in 210 as a conservative estimate, and we're awaiting a response from the province. You know,
Is it planning to be lower this year than past years?
It is calculation based. So I believe.
It's a $200,000 base amount, and then I believe it's $50 per person for communities under 1,000. But then there's another factor that's based on like how much the total assessment in the province is, and we haven't done that calculation, so we're confident that we're gonna get at least 210. Hopefully, we do get some more, but I'm not clear on how the numbers were arrived at last year exactly.
Okay.
Beyond the minimum, which is in the regulation.
A question about the gallery compared to Memorial Hall. Just intuitively, that seems bizarre that we're getting more in rent from the gallery than we are from Memorial Hall. That seems really strange. Memorial Hall is a busy place where things are always happening. And the gallery is not so much.
I think that's where we're gonna look at our rates later on this year and increase them a bit because we are very low compared to other places.
Yeah, so throughout this first page of revenues, our approach has been to be conservative. It's always, we're hopeful that we are going to have a little bit more campground revenue than what we are projecting, but again, we all know that the season can be variable and that has a real impact on revenues, so we don't want to overstate our revenues and leave ourselves in a difficult situation.
And the fire hall rental, how do we get that to 7,000 this year?
So that is based on 1,500 for utilities, 3,000 for the repairs to the drywall, which are happening soon. And 2,500 is the maintenance on the Fire Smart Garden, which is, as it says right on the sign, maintained by the New Denver and Area Volunteer Fire Department.
So
Wonderful.
have you had any conversation with New Denver about this rise in the amount that
I had a preliminary conversation with their CAO and advised her that yes, this was going to be going up because it hasn't increased in heaven only knows how long. And there have been some changes to the funding structure. It used to be that contributions to reserve in the event of dissolution of the service would be returned to the partners. So to some extent, everybody was contributing their own reserve contributions because things would come back. But right now, all of the reserve funds go to New Denver. So it's important that we include in our accounting and our subsequent invoicing to New Denver the cost of those larger maintenance projects on the asset that allows us to keep it in good shape.
So I think we might have missed each other's question and answer thing, that this is all revenue, right?
This is all revenue.
So with the 7,000, you tallied off a bunch of expenses for.
That was off the expense sheet.
For the
She was
rental.
flipping off back and forth.
Yeah, I know what the proposed expenses are, that then. So we know what our expenses are for the fire hall, and we total that up and we invoice New Denver for it. And then New Denver
Got it.
turns around and invoices us
Got it.
$40,000 or something
Very
like that for our share of the service. So,
Yeah, thank you.
What is the street lighting grant? I know it's small, but what,
we get a annual grant of about $1,500. It covers a small portion of the street lighting cost that we incur.
Yes, they pay us quarterly.
it's the cost of electricity, or do we pay for repairing them or something into?
We don't maintain them, so they're hydro-owned lights. I believe that the way that it works is the lights that are on the highway, we get a portion of them, of their operating costs funded by a grant.
You know, that would make sense because the BC Hydro grant in lieu is. It's in lieu of them paying property taxes on where their poles are sited.
So are there any further questions on the revenue page for general revenue? And are we ready to move on?
I have a question on the dog and poultry licenses. Do we even have people that actually get those anymore? We do.
I issued one last year.
I was gonna say. might be something that we want to start pushing for people to get.
Yeah, I think we could probably do better.
Because I know there's more than one dog in the town.
Definitely.
Yes.
Okay, general revenue, going once, going twice. Let's move on to water revenue. So this is more of a half page. There's an empty yellow square down towards the bottom. Bar and a bar, so.
Right under the. bottom page.
No, I think that images.
Talking this one?
No, I don't have that.
Yes, that's the one.
It was direction under Google. So,
We need extra coffee.
it was under that, first page we're looking at.
Here, see if there's one in that package.
I got it online here.
I can print a couple if we need.
Tammy Bryan's package there. That's what I have. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I don't have it.
It's not, okay, it looks like that didn't happen, let's just get through more.
I'll print them. Are you done?
Yeah.
I feel privileged.
You were the only one that actually got it.
Okay. This is the mystery of the, yeah, if you would grab them off the printer, that would be.
Was there an update on the agenda that you posted?
No.
So, okay, I'm not.
It's
You're
not
on
online.
Zoom? You're not
Yeah,
in
it's
Zoom.
not online.
Okay,
Yeah,
Gail's just gonna print it out for us.
great.
yeah.
The only one that got a copy is not.
Leave me short and sweet.
So, to be fair, there's not a lot of information in this page. But it does show that we are expecting an increase in the amount of water revenue, because we did see
Yeah.
the increased rates. So this is our estimation of where that's gonna take us. And those. There's something might be minus. No. I'm not sure.
What's GCF?
Growing Communities Fund.
Oh, okay.
So that was just
Thank
a
you.
one-time payment that we received. And so this is just sort of listing, in addition to the regular sources of revenue that we saw, we are proposing to use some money that is not surplus, but it's grant funds that have been received and been put into a reserve fund. And so we are now doing some projects that are eligible uses of those funds. And so we are proposing to spend according to this little summary above the yellow bar. So we'll be using some local government climate action program funds, some gas tax Canada community building funds, some growing communities funds, as well as we're proposing to withdraw some amounts from water reserve for this year's project. And of course, the question mark is whether we are going to appropriate any surplus from prior years in order to achieve a balanced budget this year. So again, this is, I think, something that council may just want to hold on to. There's not a whole lot to discuss at this point, but wanting to make sure that you have that information and see where the totals are coming from at this point. I think it would probably be more helpful if we moved on to the projects sheet, the big one,
The
big one,
The fun one.
printed large enough for people to see. And I will say that this iteration of the familiar looking document is a little bit expanded. We have split out a few other grants, used to include a lot more things. And so now that has been split out into a few more columns to better indicate the actual sources of funding for these various projects. So just to, I think these are probably worth going through line by line for council's information. So the CDBC fiber to the home, this is the final of 3 payments. We're planning to once again use gas tax funding for that. The CBT basin charge up, so this is funding the office heat pump and possibly an electric vehicle charging station. We are using CBT funds as well as a portion of local government climate action funds for that. Similarly, right below it, the CBT hall backup power, Memorial Hall generator, similar funding structure for that, mostly CBT with our portion contributed from LGCAP. Next down, the CBT Reach program has funded some accessibility work at the gallery as well as the multi-mat. We've still got $17,000 there. So we are proposing to continue to spend those funds this year. That one's 100% funded. So there's no matching component required from the village. Getting through the last of the CBT grants in this section. So we've got the tree planting project. Again, this is a $95,000 grant with $5,000 to be contributed from the villages. We're suggesting LGCAP at this time, but it's a multi-year project and we're only planning on spending $57,000 of the $100,000 in 2026. So the balance will be in 2027. Fire Smart, we're in year 1 of 2 of the Fire Smart program, and there's a whole suite of activity that is going to be funded by that program, including the assessments and rebates for residents and the work on the Memorial Hall that contract was just awarded last week at the council meeting. And so pleased to report that the contract has been executed and we are on our way to completing that work. We've also got funding from the province for Indigenous engagement around emergency management. And so we are spending all of that money this year, which I think that it had been supposed to expire. The funding was supposed to be used by March 31st, 2026, but they did give us an extension for a full year. So we do have until March of 2027 to finish spending that, but the plan is to do it in 2026. Similarly, we've got the local government housing initiatives. That's a fair chunk of change that was provided by the province. That is what's funding the official community plan and zoning bylaw updates, as well as some other land use planning related work that will certainly bring us into the modern era and make development in Silverton a little bit smoother. Then we've got the NG 911 data review project, which is very nearly complete, but we do still have a little bit of money. And so we have a plan to spend that in this year. There's a little bit of work still to be done on one of our bylaws and then some administrative work just implementing it. So writing letters to people, making all of the address changes in Maze, making sure that all of the various mapping platforms are aligned in their addressing requirements. So that's 100% funding from the province. The garbage truck, we are still looking at that just nice round number of 300,000. I don't know that we've heard any updates
No,
on that.
no, it's last week, fall.
Yeah, but we're still optimistic that it's going to be possibly a spring delivery. And the plan is to use gas tax funding, Canada Community Building funding dollars to pay for that. And I think that'll make a world of difference for the group.
About 100%.
Water line crossing, again, we're looking at detailed design in 2026. So that's something for which we can use the Growing Communities Fund. So we've got a number in there. The next one, the fire hall ceiling repairs, that is gas tax eligible. So that is another contract that has been awarded. And so work is going to start right away on that. Hopefully that will, that may let us generate a little bit more revenue from the fire hall this year. So fingers crossed.
Who's doing that?
Absolutely hammered construction. Yeah. Yeah, we asked a number of people for bids, and after waiting and waiting and waiting for the value of the contract, went ahead and awarded it because that work is long overdue.
Yeah.
Dike repair is another planning related project, so we're not anticipating any actual capital works this year, but even the planning component is eligible use of gas tax. That's what's proposed. Campground upgrades, so this is, we've got some signage updates to do, whether that's the big sort of maps and welcome signage, because those are inaccurate at this point.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's just the little number signs at each of the sites to make identification a little bit easier.
It'll look better than having a garbage bag that we have.
Right? Yeah, and so that and picnic tables, there's some spiffy new picnic tables that are headed towards the campground in the near future. And what we're proposing is, we're going to use the rest of the COVID funding that we have. So we're gonna use a bit of the COVID funding that we have for that, and then the balance we're proposing to use regional district community development funds.
I am so happy to see us finally using some of that money. That still leaves $70,000
Yes,
sitting there
we have plans.
as needed.
Yes, we have plans. Yeah, that may be something that we use to offset some of the deficit that we're facing. So we were just discussing, we've got a bunch of staff training expense that we need to cover, and maybe we want to apply for community development funds to achieve that. As a one-time expense that is very tremendously beneficial to the municipality to have trained staff. And so if that's something that the council is supportive of, we can look at that. Memorial Hall upgrades, so this $6,000 is fire suppression and alarm system improvements. Again, this is proposed COVID funding.
Okay.
So
And with that, is this gonna wipe out COVID funding?
that is going to, yeah. Yes. We're slow to do it, but we're getting there.
We've gotten some good mileage out of that money.
Yes. Next on the list is the water reservoir repairs. So that valve replacement, we're proposing to draw $3,000 out of water reserves to make that repair. That seems like it aligns perfectly with the establishing the terms in the establishing bylaw for the water reserve. Speak about development or acquisition of capital assets or sort of ongoing maintenance to extend the life of the asset. So we think that's an eligible use. And then next is our appraisal. So we have a risk management grant from MIADC for just over $11,000. And so we'll use that to cover a good portion of it. And then we've got that $26,000 from Columbia Basin Trust, their community development money. And so we're proposing to use a portion of that community development money to cover the remaining cost of the appraisal. And that'll really put us on better footing for our asset management as well as just our general risk management.
Yeah, the Village of Silverton got a really good start on asset management a number of years ago.
Yeah.
And that was when Hillary was the CAO. And it actually got national attention, how quick we were off the mark with starting our asset management. And it's time that we pay a bit more attention to it again. I'm happy to see that.
So we've also got community readiness. There's just this little bit of $379 of grant funding that didn't get expended in 2025, and so it carries forward. The money has now been spent, but we're just reflecting it. And we've got a bunch of community readiness grant applications here. So the next one is paying for air purifiers and the campground generator, and the one below that is paying for the office generator. So again, those are all 100% funded by Columbia Basin Trust, and we are grateful for their support. We couldn't do this without them. Similarly, the next line is a CBT grant for the accessibility doors at the Memorial Hall, and then upgrades to the audiovisual system to bring it downstairs so that it can be accessed by people with mobility limitations that can't navigate those stairs. Again, street lighting, this is just the grant portion of the expense, but because it's a grant, we were just, it ended up getting shown on this page. So. We also have a couple of joint projects with New Denver. So we've got the 2026 Wild Safe program, and then we've got the organics diversion project for the composters. And so I have included the, let's see, the Wild Safe is, we're suggesting to take all of that out of CDP again from the regional district. Those are very community-minded projects and meet the eligibility criteria rather than us relying on taxation to fund those services. And then last but not least, we have applied for a Canada Summer Jobs position for a summer student to work in the Public Works Department. And the grant portion of that is listed on other grants. And obviously the rest of the expenditure is listed with Public Works wages. So the next 3 grants that are awaiting funding decision, none of those are actually going to be expensed in 2026. So if the money does come in, it's going to go into deferred revenue. So they don't really affect our budget discussions for this year.
Okay.
They are all 100% funding as well. So there's not a matching fund component that we need to worry about. So there.
Is there a time frame?
Where, well, the local government development approvals was just submitted on Friday, and I think that one is maybe 3 months till decision. The next one down, the EOC equipment and training, was submitted in February, but there's a 4-month decision time on that one. And then the third one we haven't even applied for yet, so we're going to be waiting a little while for a decision on that. But it's likely we'll have decisions, and if we are successful, we will, that may need to be recorded on our 2026 financials. So they're in there. And now we get down to the public works requests that were, these have all been included in budget because, as you can see, we're not using taxation to fund them. We are covering them all through grant funding, and we believe that we've identified funding streams for which these expenses are eligible. So the remote controls for the pump house we're proposing that would come out of a water reserve account for $10,000. The reservoir cleaning and flushing, similar approach. And then when we get down to the patch paving that we had talked about, the gap over couple blocks over that way, the large hole, which, Terry, I think that you think that, so again, we aren't entirely sure how we got the hole, but Terry thinks that it may have been a village-driven water main repair. So it would be
Because well, any other line is gonna be more along the property, that's right along the main line itself. So when I was looking at that the other day, I thought the same thing, that would be ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So ours to fix, it's gas tax eligible, obviously, if it's something that we've lived with for a while. If there's no paving in the area, we're certainly not going to incur premium pricing to accomplish that. But if there is paving in the area, we do want to have the funds budgeted so that we could get around to fixing that if the stars align. The 1-to-1 isolation transformer, so that's what we're proposing to put on the pump house to protect those pumps from ever getting fried by our power supplies.
Or lack thereof.
By an interruption.
By any irregularities that are more than it can handle. So I think that's really valuable infrastructure, both from a dollar value and from a core service perspective. So I think that since we were lucky and didn't have to fund some of those replacement costs out of our own funds, I think that we would do well to budget for that piece of equipment. I know that we shouldn't have to, but I think it is prudent.
We shouldn't have to do lots of things. So part of the cost of doing business of living around here, yeah.
So we've also got a canopy for the back of the electric for lighting. That will make that a lot more versatile for public works, and that's Growing Communities Fund eligible. So that's the proposed source of funding for that. And then last but not least, this equipment for fire flow testing. We're proposing to use, again, some more CDP money from the regional district on that. It's a nice defined project and has benefit to the community. So that is my whirlwind tour of our projects. And is there anything that I've left out?
Very nicely laid out, sorry. That's very nicely laid out.
Yeah.
I like the fact that it's so big.
Yeah.
a
I
lot of
have a
numbers.
couple of questions, and they're aligned with each other. First, as I previously, stated in a previous meeting, I'm in favor of supporting all of the public works requests. And regarding that, and a whole bunch of projects up at the top, my only question is, do we have the capacity to undertake all of these projects?
Great question.
Fair question. I wish I had a solid answer for you. I think that, I think we have a fantastic team in place. We have a lot of staff right now, and that gives us the potential to really be able to knock a lot of things off the list. Because there is a backlog. This is definitely, we're staffed to a level that is probably excessive for Silverton going forward, but this is what we're seeing is that there were a bunch of grant funded projects that we received the funding, but we didn't do the project.
Yeah.
And so all of that has sort of created a bit of a backlog. And so now we do have an awful lot of staff and funds to pay it, but it is, I would be lying if I said it is not a significant increase on administration. So one of the things, maybe I'll just jump right into this now, since it seems like an opportune time. One of the things that we had been talking about internally was recognizing the amount of increased administrative burden or workload and appropriating some funds from surplus to offset that. Because I think that, yes, we have the grant funding for the projects or for the contractors or for the employees. It's less clear whether any of that grant funding can be used for my time or Taylor's time, cutting checks and doing payroll and providing oversight and supervision and that sort of thing. But if we aren't able to roll that into the grant funding and cover it that way, one way that we could cover those costs with an appropriation from surplus. And I think that you've all heard us say in the past about how surplus should not be appropriated for general operating expenses. But what we're feeling at this point is that there is a bunch of general admin that is above and beyond what is standard operations for us.
So regarding that increased admin, would that require having another person to take some of that off of you guys' plates, or increased hours, or
I
what?
think we're just doing okay for now. And I think that like there's diminishing returns, right? Like bringing somebody new in requires training them, providing orientation, and then managing that additional person. So I think that our sense is that we would do better to stick with the staff complement that we have right now. We do have some additional support from Cody or from Linda that maybe council isn't seeing all the time, but is tremendously helpful to regular staff in working through things. And then we will do our best to achieve what has been put in the work plan, but obviously there are going to be circumstances beyond our control that may have an impact on that. And I think that everybody involved understands that nobody's crystal ball is able to be overly accurate at this time of year.
So looking at this and having some reassurance from you that we think, in a good year, we could do this, stuff happens, and we might drop the ball somewhere along the line. I would be in favor of including all of these in our planning. They all are costed out really appropriately and grant funding identified for a humongous percentage of it. Silverton has fallen behind over the last, since 2018, I'll say. We have the staff to do it now. I am in favor of going ahead with this as a work plan, including public works.
Well, thank you for your vote of confidence. We'll do our best. We appreciate it.
Mentioned we have an awful lot of staff. I found them all to be very pleasant. I don't know which ones are the awful ones. You know, and one other quick comment, I'm glad we got that canopy under the GCF.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
don't then have to explore somehow taking it out of the staff wages. Excellent.
Councilor Staples, actually.
So
Okay, so anybody want to spend more time on this page? It's familiar, and so I think that council probably has a pretty good understanding of the information that's being presented, although, you know, at over 1.5 million, it's not like a small list.
No.
Yeah.
No. Go for it.
yeah.
Okay, so let's get into our expenses now. So this is operating expense detail. It's got a blue bar at the top and 3 columns of numbers. And I think there are 3 pages of it. So you're looking for the one that says operating expense detail draft March 18th. And starts with council remuneration. Yeah. Those 3. Would you like to walk through this? You can see them.
I'll pay that off of you.
Okay, yeah. So I'm just asking Taylor to pipe up, if there's anything that she thinks would be of interest to council. And as we go down this list, so we've got council remuneration. I believe that there are cost of living increases built into that. And then council conferences, this is funding AKBLG attendance. And then we know that the mayor is likely to go to UBCM, but that's going to be funded by the RDCK, so we don't need to be budgeting for that here.
How come council remuneration is lower, lower in the budget?
For your term as CEO, there was an increase.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
There was a bit of an increase for that.
And so education, I guess the newly elected will happen in 27.
It'll happen in 2027, although when we get down to election, I have included, I think there's $8,000 included in my election budget that is for like the pre-election workshop in case we need to contribute to that, as well as the post-election orientation. There's been some discussion that some of the smaller municipalities in the area might band together to bring somebody in to deliver a quick thing, because we know that, you know, council starts well and has to do business before LGLA happens.
Yeah.
So the timing is a challenge there.
Yeah, council has to undertake some pretty important decisions.
So you got your budget before you can even go to AKPLG to learn
Yeah.
what you do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at the inaugural
Yeah.
meeting, instead of getting some education right off the bat.
Yeah, but
Really,
and I mean, I could have put it in either, but I just lumped it in with election because in my mind,
It's for the next.
it's on my work plan for election related stuff.
yeah.
So that's where we're gonna see it. Subscriptions, it's not very exciting, but that's what costs of doing business. So this CAO and office staff wages, this is all office staff. And then we've got mercs and benefits, so mandatory employment related costs. And that is for all staff.
Okay.
Except maybe the grant funded ones, but it includes public works benefits and stuff like that. And we do have slightly higher numbers in 2026 on both of those because we were not fully staffed for all of 2025. Office materials, again, like we're seeing these slight increases because with twice as many people in the office, you go through twice as much printer paper and twice as much pens and stuff. So again, that office utilities and maintenance. We have a couple of projects in here. This is the heat pump on the village office. And so that. And then we also are gonna have just the regular utilities and maintenance so that we can have power and lights and all those good things to do our work. Again, computer and IT support. There was a lot of sorting out that had to happen last year, and we are optimistic that we have worked through that and gotten rid of the surplus licenses that were being paid for. And so we're confident that with the number that we've proposed there, the 24.5. Office maintenance, this is a new generator for the village office. So legal, again, we are optimistic and we think that we are being able to stay on a downward trend with that one. I like that. Yeah. Janitorial, on the other hand, cost is going up as we have more people in the office, and we just want to make sure that we can fund that.
Don't wipe your feet.
Audit fees are set by contract. We're in the third year of a 3-year contract, so that is something that we are going to have to plan for 2026 fiscal, 2027 expense to, we're going to have to do some identify an auditor this year for our next year. But for now, the cost is fixed. Again, bank charges, fees and interest, we're looking at $600 expense there. That is offset to some extent. There is on the revenue side, there's interest earned. So yeah, it's so our finance contract, this is our contract CFO. So again, we know that we are going to spend a fair bit of money there. If we're not spending it on a CFO, we're spending it on an auditor. And we have, there's been a lot of work to bring Silverton's practices around to aligning with PSAB and best practices in the accounting sector. And so I think that that's really valuable for the organization. It's going to mean that the next people that come in are going to be able to do what was done in the past and not put themselves in a pickle as a result of that. Does that seem about fair?
Yep, very fair.
That's good. So again, this is this elections and referendums. That is partly wages and supplies for the staff to run the election, as well as some funds to help inform candidates and successful candidates about what their roles and responsibilities look like. Travel, training, and education. This is for Taylor. We've talked about career growth and the importance of succession planning, and this training is a piece of that puzzle. So again, this is one of those lines that I think could be potentially, if council wanted to look at different ways of offsetting deficits, we could look at lumping a bunch of staff training together and using community development funds from the RDPA to achieve that. Liability insurance, it is what it is. There's our number, and we're grateful for MIA trying to keep costs reasonably under control, because I think that the insurance market is getting tougher.
Oh, yeah.
That's an incredible price. That's what we pay over there, and our shows are a lot smaller than this.
So that's just our liability, but it's there. We deliver a lot of services, and yeah, that's the cost of doing business. Again, grant and aids. This was something else that I thought might make sense to use community development funds for.
Not sure you can. Because I did have a conversation with Stuart Horn sometime in the last year about what community development funds could be used for. And he said, look at projects. It's not for operating expenses. It's not for your ongoing expenses. Look at projects. So it would just be a matter of identifying a project that money could be going towards and freeing up money.
Yeah.
Elsewise.
Yeah, and what we can do is the application does not have to come from the village. What you can have let's take the community club, for example, they aren't one of the ones who applied here, but we could get a council resolution that authorizes a CDP application by the community club from Silverton's CDP funds. And then that gets forwarded to them and
That goes through
that goes through, yeah, and it could then fund fireworks or whatever other appropriate project. So yeah, the mechanism,
Yeah,
there's some care that needs to be taken to make sure that we're not running afoul. But I did take a look at the policy and at the application today, and I think that we're not stuck. And again, this is my professional development on the next line, $5,000, and that funds spring and fall chapter meetings as well as attendance at the LGMA annual conference for me. And then contracted services, this 22,000 is our appraisal. That's what that listing is, which is again, anything that's in this blue column is funded through grants or identified in funding sources, not through taxation. So the only things that are being funded through taxation are the right-hand column. So that's a grand tour of general government services. In case you were wondering what we do. So then the next section is protective services. So we see our property insurance there under insurance for buildings, the emergency program. These are the grant funds from the EDMA Indigenous engagement around emergency management. Fire hall utilities are coming in at 1,500, fire hall maintenance, 2,500 for the garden, and then 3,000 for the repairs to the ceilings. And then the fire services contract, we don't have an actual number for that, but we're estimating $40,000 in the absence of other information and from that. Fire inspection, this is actually just the maintenance of the fire extinguishers in all of our buildings and vehicles, and we have a lot of fire extinguishers. So that's what that is. Animal control, I left two things in here, maybe one of them should actually be split out, but basically it's 2,300. That is the village's 1/3 share of 2 composters plus $1,000 towards the Wild Safe BC program in 2026. Danger tree removal, there is nothing currently budgeted, but I did want to keep that line on there. It's not like we budgeted anything in previous years for it, but just letting council know that that is currently blank.
I would like to see it end up with a number.
Creek protection, this is planning around the dike work, so we need a detailed design for the armoring down there and potentially doing the work. We'll see how far we get and how far that money stretches. And then last in this section is the Fire Smart program, and that includes, as I mentioned earlier, the rebates, the assessments and the rebates for residents, as well as the improvements to the Memorial Hall and some other public education pieces. And actually the new updated community wildfire resiliency plan for Area H North that was a shared project led by the regional district that included Silverton, New Denver, and a defined portion of Area H. And that's protective services. We're seeing a modest increase, but really that increase is it's not very significant, like it's largely driven by insurance, which. is-
Insurance is going up everywhere, even our house insurance. Just took that.
Significantly.
And then the last section on this page is development services. So this isn't something that has been a line item in the past, but there's so much work happening in that, just in that area, that it made sense to add it as a section in our financial statements, in our finance system. And I think that, as we're seeing, as this modernization project gets underway, we're seeing the impacts of not having any funds allocated to that over the years. And so I think that it's probably important to continue to budget for something in that arena in the future.
Remember the LG housing project?
So this is the local government housing initiatives money that funds were provided by the province when they made all of the changes to the provincial legislation around the small multi-unit housing needs and housing needs assessments, and the need to align your official community plan and zoning bylaws with the new legislation, which Silverton does in spirit, but there's some other technical stuff missing from the bylaws. So this is funding the OCP update and the related zoning bylaw updates, as well as hopefully some floodplain modernization. We've got the mapping, and now we need to turn that into a bylaw so that it's usable. And we're looking at, there's some other sort of like planning related work that's being done as part of that project, but does that answer what you're looking for? Yeah. Any other questions about any of that first page of expenses? Again, so the stuff in purple is subtotals, and that column in the center is entirely grant funded and matches with the numbers that are on your ultra large projects page. So
I know New Denver was a little late in getting us the fire services contract last year. Are they gonna get it just a little this year, or is it going to change? I know they changed the number last year. Can they just do that every year, or do they have to, they can do that every year?
okay, moving on to the next page, we're into transportation services. So we see a lot of public works wages here, including the portion that is grant funded, which is for the summer student.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have raised this before we turned the page over. Council remuneration.
Yes.
It is considered appropriate for city council to recommend, if they so wish, an increase in council stipends to take effect for the new council. We have not even previously discussed this, but I wanted to just raise that as a thing before we
Yeah.
skip past it
I
entirely.
do have I did do a little bit of research on that to make sure that Silverton's rates were not significantly out of line with other similarly sized and local municipalities. And my recollection is that Silverton's in a reasonable place relative to other similarly sized and area municipalities. I can circulate that to council if anybody wants to take a look at it. Would that be of interest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also take this opportunity to note that we are no longer the second smallest by population, but the third smallest by population. McBride is now down to less population than we have. So that's the Dallas, McBride, and Silverton. We're coming up in the world.
Aren't they gaining one? Isn't that guy from New Denver moving to Pride?
Yeah. So they would go from 144 to 145.
New Denver. Yeah, New Denver moved down.
Sorry for that.
No, that's great. Yeah, I do have the information. It's a bit hard for me to pull it up, I think,
Yeah.
while I'm sharing my screen, but I can certainly circulate that to council.
And when would we have an opportunity to discuss that again?
Well, we're gonna have to have another meeting. Probably, we're maybe looking at April 1st, which is either a great day to have a budget meeting or a ridiculous day to have a budget meeting, but that sort of seems to be the date that is likely to work, although we're confirming that with Linda to make sure that she's available. And so what we're hoping to do at this point is to sort of get a sense of what council's appetite is for a tax increase. And then also get a sense of whether we're on the right track with some of the ways that we are proposing to balance the budget. Or whether council would like to reduce some of the core services that we're providing in order to balance the budget. So that's kind of the goal for this meeting. And then at the next meeting, we'll look at, once we know what that amount of taxation that we want to collect, there can be some discussion about where, how the various property classes contribute to that overall tax amount. And looking at the multiples between the different property classes. And of course, any small changes that need to be made, such as an adjustment to the council remuneration, could certainly be made at that time. Are we ready for transportation services
Sure.
in all its glory? Okay, so let's just go through quickly the project ones on this. So we've got the Canada Summer Jobs under Public Works Wages. Under the truck, we've got I know it says Dodge truck, just think of it as all trucks. That is the new garbage truck as well as the canopy for the EV. And then down at the bottom, $1,500 grant for street lighting. So as you can see, it's a small percentage of our total street lighting costs, but we don't say no if they want to show that. And then Public Works wages, some of them are allocated here, but there are also some down in garbage collection and some also in water. Training and education, I think this is actually a chainsaw course for Public Works, so that they would be able to safely do some of the additional brushing and maintenance that we need to be having done around town. Our fleet insurance through ICBC, we are anticipating that is going to go up a little bit when we get a new truck. So
Expensive.
yeah. But we'll save it on WCB claims.
Yeah, that includes the voter and.
Yeah.
Everything else.
It includes everything.
Exactly, yeah,
And
yeah,
mowers,
totally.
whole fleet. Fuel costs, we're increasing that a little bit. Who knows where fuel costs are gonna land? But my guess is that they're not going down over the long haul. So,
Do we have our own tank or we fuel up at the gas station?
I believe both.
Yes, we have our own here that we contract and they come and fill it up. Terry can correct me if I'm wrong. And then for like most of our equipment is diesel. And then for like the smaller equipment, mowers, maintenance, we do have a fleet card for the gas station. So it's minimal fuel at the gas station and larger in contracted.
And here's
fuel
where the
filling.
EV truck really pays off. Yeah, prices are going up by the day.
Yeah. We've budgeted a bit for backhoe maintenance and mower maintenance. I mean, those are a little bit interchangeable, but we do have equipment and it does require ongoing maintenance, so we've got that there. Again, we're looking at a bit of an increase on the tools and equipment budget, just because now that the crew has familiarized themselves with what we have, they've identified a few items on their wish list, and so we're, within reason, trying to accommodate those requests. Again, shop maintenance, there had been a bunch of wages included in this line in 2025, so that's why we're seeing a big drop there. We've just reallocated the wages. They're living in a different bucket, but so it's not actually a decrease in the level of maintenance for that building that's contemplated there. Street maintenance, again, we didn't have a ton of plowing expense this winter, but we don't know what next fall is gonna look like, and there is a potential there. Or next week, right? Or 10 minutes from now. So
Totally.
we just have a nice, keeping the budget about the same there. The footbridge, there's been some really nice work done, and I think it's looking really good, but I've just included some money for materials in case there are some additional sections that are in need of repair later this year. And then street lighting, that's what it costs, and notice there isn't anything in there right now for sidewalks. We are still exploring what that might look like. If we do sidewalks, that is going to be something that is going to be in that blue column of, we will identify an existing funding source so that it's not going to have an impact on taxation.
The other thing that jumps out at me is the low $1,000 for the backhoe maintenance. That very $1,000 is nothing for maintenance or repair of equipment like that.
Agreed. I think that I'm sort of thinking of backhoe and mowers together as a $2,000 for the two of them, which seems to be what we looked at. Although we did get some additional maintenance done, like we did have an overhaul this spring, so you're right, that one maybe does need to have a little bit more cushions in it for the unknowns.
$1,000 or something.
Any other thoughts on transportation services that people would like to explore? Anything? Well, we're still gonna be on the page, so if anything comes up. Garbage collection wages and then tipping fees. Garbage collection wages, we are shuffling things around a little bit. Again, it's not gonna have an impact on taxation, because whether the money shows in that bucket or in a different bucket, all of the wage costs are sprinkled throughout this budget. So I'm looking at that and going, yeah, maybe that should go up, but that'll just drive another one of the wage costs down. So, and then tipping fees, we know that we're looking at a 10% increase. So that's why that number is significantly higher than it was.
A lot more than 10%.
Yeah.
Well, but we think that there's going to be some, we aren't sure, but
Weren't they saying 6.3% at the budget meeting the other night?
It was a 10% and then a 6.3%. There was two different percentages.
Oh, cumulatively on the tipping fees. Oh, that's tricky.
so maybe we need our 15.
Mhm.
Yeah. So then we get into our recreation and cultural services. Just going through the blue column first to answer any questions about that. Gallery maintenance. So when it says maintenance, we're trying to get to just a single line for each of these facilities. We aren't quite there yet, but utilities are getting lumped in with gallery maintenance. The project portion is the REACH grant for accessibility improvements. And the reason that the wage cost again is dropped down, or that the cost it has dropped down there, is that the wages have been removed from that line and are living elsewhere in the budget. But utilities have been rolled in, and so that is going to be our utilities and what we are anticipating in the way of maintenance for the $10,000 there for gallery maintenance. And then for Memorial Hall, that is the generator for the Memorial Hall, as well as the upgrades to the fire system, fire suppression system and alarms, and the Basin Arts grant that will do the front doors and the AV system. So pretty significant investment plan for Memorial Hall this year. It does, what is not included in that line, but was shown earlier, is the exterior improvements that are funded by the fire smart grant. So yeah, all of a sudden, we're spending $250,000 on the Memorial Hall this year. And every single penny of it is going to be grant funded or funded from other sources rather than taxation.
That's awesome.
Curling rink maintenance, again, we don't really do anything there, so we budgeted $1,000. We anticipate that there is going to be more of our village resources that are directed to that. That's one of the things that they raised in their meeting with me. But again, we'll cross that bridge.
It's 2027.
Yeah, and they had discussed coming and appearing as a delegation before council to provide a bit of an update, so we'll try and schedule that.
And they have a huge project for this year. They have drywall over there. They're wanting to get in on that this year and start. So there will be maintenance done on there next year. Yeah.
Awesome.
They're just trying to round up their volunteers, so if anybody would like to volunteer.
Parks maintenance, it's a bit of an odd place to put it, but this is the project for the tree planting program. So it's living there, and then routine maintenance is coming in at $1,500. Again, the reason that we're seeing that drop from last year's actuals is because the wage component of that has been removed and is living elsewhere.
I love watching budgets through the years that the wage costs go here and then the wage costs, same wage costs.
Yeah.
Next year they go there and then council changes,
And then they go there.
admin changes, it goes someplace else. It's the same money,
Yeah.
but it's allocated differently.
So again, with the outdoor exhibit, we budgeted $1,000 just because we know that sometimes we have expenses that get incurred there. But we are optimistic that some of that work is going to be done without running through our books and is going to be just handled by the community club, which is wonderful. Campground contract, again, this 35,000 is 50% of the 70,000 of revenue that was projected, so those are sort of balancing themselves out a little bit. And then for campground maintenance, we're looking at the 45,000 is 25,000 for 25,000 for picnic tables and signage improvements, as well as 15,000 for generator. And I think 5,000 also for, maybe for the air purifiers are in there. Does that sound about right? Yep. So that's what's in that 45, and then the 7,500 for supplies and maintenance. And again, the reason for the drop is that the wage component of that 1,300 or 13,000 in 2025 is listed elsewhere. Campground booking system. So we do pay between $5,000 and $6,000 to a third party to manage all of our bookings for us. And that's what that 6,000 is for.
I thought you did that in-house this year.
We are actually only paying for when the campground season is live, and we do in-house in the off-season. So in 2025 budget, it was 11,000 we paid. So we have drastically reduce that by monitoring the email and all of those things in the office in the off season.
Right.
Yeah. And then the line below that, community capital projects, that is the third and final payment for the CBPC fiber to the home phase 2. And again, campground park supplies has just been moved up into that maintenance line. So that takes us to, that was a quick tour of $750,000 worth of expenses, as well as 1.3 million in projects.
And twice on Sunday.
And then the third and final page in this expense section is the water expenditures. And so we're seeing, do people need a moment to get to water? Yeah, perfect. So water wages, again, we're just having a portion of the total public works wages are being allocated to water. We think that there is a fair bit of water related work that is going to happen this year. So increasing that rather than decreasing that is what we've aimed for there. I will just note that there are no, at this point, we don't allocate any general admin to water. Do you see what I mean? But clearly there is a lot of general admin that serves this fund. So that's when we're looking at the, back to that budget summary page where we see a real surplus in water. Part of that surplus is being overstated because there is no allocation for general admin to water. So, water wages, again, some education and training to ensure that we are planning for succession and training up the new members of the team. Our permits and licenses that we are required to obtain from the province in order to operate our water system. And then we've got some materials. Now, again, the naming of these accounts is a little bit misleading. Don't put too much faith in those labels, but we have got a bunch of different projects here. The 6,000, I believe, is the fire flow equipment that is being purchased. The 22,000 below that is the transformer, the isolation transformer to protect the pumps. The 12,000 is a 3,000 for hold on. I need to see a big page.
It was, I think, the 9 or
It is going to be 9 for reservoir cleaning and flushing and 3 for valve replacement. And then 10,000 in pump utilities is the remote control system for the pumps. And then $50,000 is the design on the water main crossing. And 15,000 is it is the it's the paving.
yeah, I was gonna say it was attached.
And then a couple things to note just generally on the overall water budget. We're seeing a decrease in our water sampling costs because as a small water system, we're now having those done by Interior Health. So that dropped our costs down significantly, which is welcome. We are looking at having enough in budget that we can maintain our water system reliably, because that is a great cause of stress when there are problems with that. And it's really nice to have everything working reliably now. I think that makes us all sleep a little better. And so we just want to, we haven't been overly generous in the way that we've budgeted, but we are trying to make sure that when there's work that needs to be done on that system, there are funds available to cover those costs. So that is the end of our review of the expenses. There are a couple of other pages that we may want to look at. I have one more about reserve funds that looks sort of reserve transfers. It's the only one that got printed sideways. So we've got 2 years shown here, and just drawing people's attention to the fact that in 2025, we did make some contributions to reserve. both to general capital and to water reserve. In 2026, we are not proposing any contributions to reserve in the current budget. Not to say we can't, but we're looking at, if I just go back to the page that we were on before, we're looking at that, let's call it a $44,000 deficit, 43,910. And that does not include any contributions to reserve. And we are on top of that planning to draw down the water reserve in this year to fund some very eligible and very important projects. But those numbers are lower than what they should be.
I'd be interested to see a tally of the costs, expenses that are over and above what we would normally expect when we refer back to, we're still cleaning up messes from the past. What are those costs this year that we would not anticipate having next year?
Well, I think that in general, it's increased finance, vehicle contract costs, as well as just overall general admin, because I would not normally have a staff of 1, 2, 3, like, I would not normally have as many staff as there currently are, and so like, I spend most of my Tuesdays just in meetings with each of my staff, and that takes all day.
Just see those grants coming in and you can keep them back.
Yeah, so my point is, like,
Yeah.
what would a normal budget look like without those additional expenses that are a result of past issues? And
It's like a
for-
trick
I think it's a
Really?
good
Yeah.
question, but I don't think we would have enough information
No.
to provide you with with something that I would be confident in projecting.
yeah, and the reason that I thought of that was the nothing going surplus.
Yeah.
Because in future, this year, I can see saying that's okay with me, but in future years, I would think our expenses would be lower, and then we want to start contributing to surplus.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna just stop my share here so that I can just look around quickly in my background to pull up a page.
I've got some questions when you're done too.
No way, Brian.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian, ask a question.
You ready now?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I thought we were raising water taxes and part of that was supposed to go to reserves.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And so the question is, what would council like to do differently in order to achieve that? Because we're looking at a $44,000 deficit at this point, and there are a couple of options available to council. In general terms, you can either, I don't think we have any options for increasing revenues at this point. So other than increasing taxation or increasing the amount that's appropriated from surplus, from prior year surplus, right?
And more of a potentially.
Potentially, but I don't think that we can count on that at this point. So that'll be wonderful if it does come in, but I don't think that we can, since we haven't gone through the process of reviewing the rates and we don't know what the rental rates that council is gonna settle on are going to be, I don't think that we can, we can't budget for it because we don't know what that's gonna turn into.
And remind me about the 0 on the campground cabin. Is that because the attendant is living
That's because the attendant is living in there, yeah.
free in addition to their other remuneration?
Yeah, and that was the arrangement that was arrived at last year.
Can we use an additional amount of CCBF funds to offset some of the water costs so that we can use the raise in water rates to make a contribution to reserves?
We can, but that won't achieve that because none of those project components are being funded through taxation or user fees. So the solution, like So you can either cut some core services, which I think is going to be challenging. We haven't, we've done it once through and we've said, well, we could drop that one by 500, we could try to sharpen our pencils a little bit, you know, we've done that exercise and we got it down to 44,000 of deficit. So now the question becomes, if we can't really raise our revenues other than through taxation or appropriation of surplus, and either staff needs direction about what it is that we are gonna cut, and you could say, well, everybody's going to a 0.8 work week, right? And we're just not gonna have the staff, and that's gonna have some ripple implications on our ability to deliver.
Yes, and I'm not willing to look at cutting core services. We're pretty close to the bone,
Yeah,
even when we think we're being, you know, magnanimous.
yeah,
How much is there in operating surplus that we could draw on, or prior year surplus?
there is plenty. I don't have an actual number at this point because we are
Yeah, yeah.
audit.
Yeah.
And that is changing, but we know that we had a healthy prior year surplus going into 2025. And it's looking like that is going to increase rather than decrease as a result of all of the shakeout of 2025.
I think it's important to continue adding to the water reserve on an annual basis, come hell or high water, as they say. And so I would be willing to look at bringing some prior year surplus into that to make it possible to.
So some of the options that we were looking at were to bring, to use some additional community development funding for example, the grant and aids and possibly some staff training. Which I think meets those criteria. That's project-based, it's clear, it's defined. It's not something that you necessarily are going to do every year. Yes, we're gonna do some staff training every year, but the big ticket items maybe they're sort of occasional and one time. So if we were looking at that, we would be looking at bringing in about, if we didn't use mine, it would be, let's call it it's 10,500 of additional grants and aid and staff training that we could include as a target for regional district funding. Does that have, I'm not hearing like really loud no's at this point, and it doesn't have to be a firm yes, but if somebody has a hard no on it, this would be a great time. So if we looked at doing that, we would then, that would take us down to a $34,000 deficit. And if we did something like saying, let's just appropriate a nice round number, like $50,000 of prior year surplus to address the overall backlog in general government services that is doing that, then that would give us 16 to the good that could be split into reserve contributions in one way or the other. Something more along those lines. Of that. And I mean, we don't have to we don't have to decide exact numbers right now because there's little value in working out that detail. But if I have a sense from council that is sort of the package that would be appealing, then I can work out what those exact numbers are and bring them back.
What little I understand, unfortunately, about financial ends, that really does sound like a pretty sensible solution to.
Yeah, and when I see Tanya nodding.
I already used half of our reserves just this year in our water, so.
Yeah.
That's a good job.
We're playing catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's the.
it's, we have to acknowledge that, but it's also a good opportunity to go, we are committed to putting money in water reserve every year.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
I got,
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I got a few things, so if I can just finish what I started here. just to reiterate what I said, I didn't vote to increase taxes. I voted to increase the taxes to make sure that we're contributing to the reserve fund, period, with that. If we end up getting down to this question for you, we end up getting down to 35,000 and we get no other monies, would that equal like a 5% tax increase for the residents?
No.
Then,
What's a 1% tax increase?
$2,000.
Yeah, a 1% tax increase is $2,000.
It'll be way more than 5%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even 10%
so-
is 23.
So on the tax increase scenarios that I put together, very rough draft, but I took 2026 assessment values and I did a couple different scenarios. So I used the mill rate from 2025 and calculated what that would look like.
Candace, can you pull this
Yeah,
sheet up? for
I'm
Brian?
just trying to share it.
I did email him
He's
everything,
on
but
his
he
phone.
might be on his phone, yeah.
I'm a
Sure,
good
yes.
friend. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then so if you see there in the far column, a percentage increase is about what, and these are still rough numbers because we don't have, of course, a mill rate for this year. Or collections from others and all those things, but a 10% increase would be around $23,000.
If we're on the tax increase scenario conversation, I would not be in favor of a 10% increase because of the effects of inflation that everybody is feeling. And I would be happily willing to consider a 5% increase. But one of the caveats that I bring forward every year is I want to know what it's going to do to folks who are on homeowner grant, because I don't want to price people out of that if we can avoid it. It's something that I just wanted to know. It's not the make or break, but it's pretty important.
You don't understand how that's related to the homeowner grant.
If our tax increase goes up beyond a certain point, then people start having to pay on top of the homeowner grant.
It only pays so much, so you can make the difference.
Yeah. So it's just. So there's some kind of financial impact. It's probably not a lot.
No,
But
we
for the
can-
people who are getting that homeowner grant, it's a lot. If they have to start paying more.
Yeah, I think that
But what is it?
there's not gonna be an easy way to figure that out. But what we can do for the next meeting is we can give you what the impact on an average home is
Yeah.
and a little bit
It
more
gives a
feeling like
sense of
that
it,
of
yeah.
what the actual tax bill is going to be, because here we're just talking about the total amount of tax collected by the village, not the impact on individual tax bills and how that would be split out. So that's sort of, I think that the question at this point is what level of, we think that a tax increase is appropriate because we know that there's inflation in the universe. And so staying at zero is probably not fiscally responsible. So what is council's appetite for a tax increase this year? And we can still provide a couple of scenarios at the next meeting, but I think that if 1 is out of the question and 10 is out of the question, there's no point in us producing those numbers for you and running those calculations. So if we're able to narrow it down, this would be helpful for staff.
Was it projected to have an 8% increase this year?
I believe so in the
Yeah.
financial plan, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think it was like 8.
yeah,
Yeah, which would bring in, I don't know, plus or minus 17,000.
Hmm.
18,000 of additional funds, which could then provide for some reasonable contributions to reserves, because we would have sufficient funds to make those allocations.
So I go back to Leah's, about the surplus operating funds. I think that's in the order of 800,000 or a million, right? And the reason it's there, let's say, one possible and very likely reason that operating service is so big is because so much stuff didn't happen that should have happened over the last 15 years. And now we're saying we're cleaning up that mess and we're charging it forward. Why don't we dip into the operating surplus? Because that's the reason stuff can be done. I'm totally okay with that logic. And if we have to, like, whatever it is, let's balance the budget and take that out
It
of.
wasn't that 50,000 we were just talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so how would that 50,000, if going with that
Yeah.
scenario, how would that change what we're looking at here, or would it?
Well, then we could make our, I mean, we would have what, like 30 and change, 34,000 to contribute to reserve funds. That's gonna be split between water and general, but it's still a step in the right direction, you know, it's a,
So we'd be kind of meeting what Brian's looking for too.
Yeah.
And that, okay, so then what kind of tax increase would we have to be looking at?
well, when I said 34, I was going with the 8%.
Oh, okay,
That had been discussed in the last, that was what was projected in the last 5-year financial plan for this year. And so I think that, I mean, if what I'm hearing is that probably somewhere between 5 and 8 is going to be what is going to, at the end of the day, obviously nobody wants to do a tax increase. But what is going to be on balance, the package that is most satisfactory to council of the
I'd be
available
okay
options.
with seeing around a 5. I do not want to see a 10 or higher. We were the highest in the whole area last year, and I do not want to see that again this year. I do agree with using some prior year surplus to bring it down and still be able to contribute to our taxes. I prefer actually like to see around 5%, not 8%. I see where Brian's coming from that one, but if we can drop from our prior year surplus just to bring it down a bit, then I would like that.
yeah, I agree with, let's try to hit 5. If as close to it as we can.
Yeah, I'm pretty committed to not going above 5 for a number of reasons. People are in financial shock right now and in political shock right now. And what's going on around us in the world means that every day that you put off filling your gas tank is gonna cost you an extra $10, if not more. People are, when I say people are hurting, I don't mean just that they're hurting financially, but they're hurting mentally. We already have taken a substantial increase in water and garbage rates. If we have off of the prior surplus that we can bring forward, I'm all for that, and I would like to see no more than a 5% taxation increase.
So you said a 1% increase generates $2,000 in revenue.
Roughly, yeah.
So when we're, let's just say equivalent, so I'll be a little rhetorical here, let's say we're equivalent over 5%, that's $10,000.
11.6.
Let's take that out of this operating surplus and we just do 0 increases here. Let's give everybody a break. We're all doing such an amazing job. You guys are doing such an amazing job. We've still got oodles of operating surplus. Let's just give everybody a break and not do an increase this year.
Is that feasible?
I would like to have our,
$10,000.
yeah, I'd like Taylor's opinion on that.
Yeah, I would. Wait.
We're under the.
Oh, boy. I think it's a good conversation. I think a 0% tax increase is actually a credit. Like it's actually, we would lose money.
Because we're not keeping pace with
Because we're not
inflation.
keeping pace with inflation. So on my sheet, it's kind of like a neutral, it's called like a neutral revenue. And I think it kind of equated to like 3.6%, which would be a small increase. It's basically to maintain, it's not really like a taxation increase, but if we were to keep it zero, the village would have to fund that gap. If that makes any sense.
And we would have to look at a bigger increase in the
Next
following year,
Yeah.
just to catch up.
Yes. So I hear the sentiment and I think it's a great conversation to have. But I don't know.
It's not something you would recommend.
It's not something I would recommend as zero, like as no increase at all. I would recommend maybe just a very small percentage so that we're still collecting proper taxation revenues without increasing it
Is it-
drastically. Does that make?
Could it work?
2%?
What's the idea?
CPI is consumer price index.
Yeah, but what is that for this year?
I think 2.6%.
2.6, yeah.
Yeah.
It's there on that.
Yeah.
But then go back to the amount, the additional costs because of the backlogs in the budget. Let's say, so you're saying we need to get a 3.6 something percent to meet inflation. And I'm saying we're in our budget, we've got at least 4% of backlog expenses that shouldn't really be in the budget. And those two balance each other out. We normally wouldn't have that extra expense. See, it's not quite, maybe not quite landing, but there's something in there that makes sense to me.
Yeah, well, what I would suggest is why don't we come back with scenarios for 3, 5, and 8? Which seems to be, I mean, a 0 is easy to do, so we'll see what that is as our baseline, and then map out 3, 5, and 8, and we'll figure out exactly what the numbers are, because I think that at this point, I'm doing math in my head and there's been a slippage.
It's-
Once we see that actually comes out, that it's only actually a $50 increase on your tax bill,
Right.
whereas you're seeing an 8%,
Yeah.
it's hard to
Yeah.
see it, right? It's,
And that was the thing. The intention is with more of the actual tax discussion, because this was just kind of like quick scenarios, see where we're kind of landing to bridge the gap with the deficit. But the more like robust tax calculation, tax rate discussion, I can definitely provide some more detailed impact, what that actually looks like on an average home value. Like, is that $10 on your tax bill, or is it, so I can provide quite a bit more detail and projections for that when we discuss that.
And are there costs associated with doing a tax increase? If we kept it at 0 relative to having to change it, what is the cost of making that change? Just a bit of admin, like a couple of ticks on the computer,
Yeah.
everybody changes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I kind of had that originally, but took that out because it wasn't.
Yeah, no, and it's, it's 8:42 now. I think that I'm really pleased with the amount of ground that got covered, and I think I have a good sense of what council is wanting to see in a final budget presentation in a couple of weeks.
I know Brian would speak up. Brian, did you finish the list of things you had?
Nope,
well,
but I'm enjoying the conversation you guys are having. Where I sit with the rate is, like somewhere around 3.5%, 5 tops. I definitely can, empathize with what Councillor Main is saying. As far as being good governance, we can't go 0. We gotta go higher than 0, but less than 5. But I know people are hurting. And to raise their taxes 8%, yeah, it might only be a few bucks per household, but psychologically, that's a huge jump. And Yeah, so that's where I'm sitting on that. And my question from before was that remote control device for our pump house, is that covered by grant funds?
It's an eligible expenditure from, I can't remember the,
I think the community building fund.
Remote radio control for compost come out of the water reserve.
yeah, Minnesota Water Reserve. Yeah,
Okay,
so.
I'm wondering if we can defer that.
Yeah, and
For
we
next year.
may be able to, or we may be able to find another source of funding that would be eligible for it, rather than pulling it out of reserve.
Yeah, okay. And lastly, I think you're all doing a great job. Sure, a lot of work for a small little town, eh?
Thank you.
It's a beautiful town, so, you know, we all care for it.
That is true. Thank you. I appreciate the praise.
I'd like to apologize for my lateness to.
All
I
good.
just-
Done.
We'll talk later, Don. Do better.
Now Barb is totally lame pretty well. She can't walk on her foot and.
She's online, she's listening to everything you say.
Yeah, a lot of hours of sleep being lost here, so I just I was actually almost about to fall asleep when that phone rang.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I just,
Did we make it exciting enough for you to keep you awake?
yeah,
Okay,
it's really-
Yeah, it's open, but yeah, it's, has been fun.
I think we made great progress, and I'd like to thank Taylor, Catherine, and everybody for doing all the work. I know Linda's put in tons of hours trying to get the audits and the budget sorted out along with Taylor. This is good. This is a good first look at it, and I think we've left you with a bunch of good options to bring back to us.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for the direction.
Yeah, this
It's
is
very
very helpful.
helpful.
Very, very wonderful, and yeah, it's nice to know that we're for the most part on the right track, and that this is, we were hearing what council was saying and turning around and putting back together something that is pretty reasonable, and so we'll make a few tweaks and provide a little bit more in the way of background, and at this point, we're not quite ready to schedule the meeting, but we will reach out to council with the dates, make sure everybody is available and it can work once we just give us a minute to firm up a few more availability calendars with other parts.
That's good.
April 1st would work, but not before noon, because
Yeah.
before noon, you don't know if it's true.
Right.
Okay, well, anything further from council or staff? I don't need to interrupt you. Anybody on public who would like to comment? Jan, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm just interested in that kind of boost staffing. I wasn't aware of, so how many staff do we have now and how were we able to pull that off?
We
Actually, we're trying to count.
We have quite a bit of staff. Yeah.
well, we have 3 temporary part-time grant funded positions. So that is significant. So we have the 4 regular staff, so the 3 of us who are here plus Tim. And then we also have Cody, who's part-time regular, so 1 day a week. And then Linda, who's doing our contract finance on an as-needed basis. So,
And then above that, 3.
and then 3 more.
Wow.
Yeah,
And the nice thing about those is they're all grant funded. So it's
Yeah,
not, yeah.
awesome. But
Yeah.
temporary.
yeah.
Okay, but they're filling in all
No, that's
gaps and
okay.
getting a lot of projects done, so it's great.
You recall 3 years ago, when we were begging to hire more staff, and we were told wasn't capacity and couldn't afford it, and so on. It's all right. It was one CAO, that was it.
Yeah, and this,
And 1.5 public works, that was it.
so the amount of staff we have now, they're not just doing special projects, they're doing things like figuring out what the status of our bylaws and policies actually is, because it was never adequately tracked previously.
We have
Because
a
we
room
were
with
on
full boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what that's like.
All of that. The you, of course, and you too, when you jumped in as acting mayor, or acting city. CEO, yeah. But you're the one who-
Every hat you can have your success on.
Yeah, I think we're
We're getting back.
It is.
we're getting back on the right side of things.
Yeah, we're finding files that we've lost and refound and reviewing.
Yeah.
It's going good. Anybody online that have any questions, comments? No? Seeing no comments, questions, motion to adjourn. Thanks for letting me second by Councilor Dembo. Thanks for Kevin, Brian. Thanks for everybody online.
Take care, Brian.
Thanks all. Take care. Bye.